1045theteam.com. We're bringing you the fifth round podcast. I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano, with our host, Brian France and Ian Foard. This is our third episode, guys. We're going to hit all the fights that happened last weekend. And of course, it is time. The UFC coming to New York, ladies and gentlemen, coming to the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden on Saturday. One of the biggest cards we've ever seen. But before we give you our selections and everything about UFC 205, let's recap what we talked about last week, guys. Ian, take it away, brother.
All right. Last week, we picked 3 fights to talk about at Fight Night 98 and 1 fight from Bellator 163. So let's start it off with probably the most accurate pick we had all weekend. Bellator 163. Phil Davis, Liam McGeary. We picked that to a T. I'm going to pat myself on the back right now. We said Davis was going to come out with some strong jabs, some straight punches behind it, a lot of leg kicks, lots of control, might take some arm locks, probably going to move to mount. It's exactly what happened. Probably the most dominant title fight I've seen in recent memory, going years back.
Yeah, I mean, that fight was just incredible with Phil Davis dominant.
It's very rare you see a 10-8 round in MMA. Maybe one fight per event gets a 10-8 round. You never see a 10-8 round in a title fight. How about 2 10-8 rounds? That was a 50-43 score on the judges' scorecards. That's embarrassing. That's not just bad, it's embarrassing. Probably a disaster overall on that card for Bellator. Who does Phil Davis even fight next at this point? Because you can't run that fight back. Everybody would love a rematch if it was competitive, but you can't run a 50-43 scorecard back.
No, you can't at all. I mean, right now the only logical one would be the winner of Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen, which that's only if Chael Sonnen wins. Yeah. I would not want to see Tito Ortiz try to wrestle with Phil Davis because that would not go well.
Chael Sonnen either. This is the sad state of affairs outside of the UFC right now. The bigger the division gets, the weaker it is. And in Bellator right now, Phil Davis has already beaten King Mo. Rampage doesn't think he's going to make 205 again. He's already beaten an Emmanuel Newton. Liam McGeary just got embarrassed, and all you have left is Tito and Chael. So a guy who's got like 3 wins in the last 10 years, and Chael Sonnen coming out of retirement is a worse version, older version anyways, of Phil Davis. Oh, he's a wrestler with some striking who should be at 185, not 205, and everything he does, Davis does better with more athleticism. That's a fight I want to see.
Oh, yeah. I really don't want to see Phil Davis fight either of those two. He's younger, stronger, faster. He's bigger than both of them. I mean, obviously, Chael Sonnen was a 185-pounder in the UFC, should still be in the the middleweight division in Bellator, but obviously his first fight back.
So congrats to Phil Davis coming in, winning the title in Bellator like he said he was going to. Knocking off their poster child, Liam McGeary, who at the time was undefeated. The rest of the card, a nightmare as well for Bellator. They lost Paul Daly the day of the event because his weight cut was too hard and the doctors wouldn't let him in the cage. And they lost the Marlo Conan fight the day before because her opponent weighed in way overweight. And the only other fight that mattered on the card for anybody who's been watching the sport for a while and is into heavyweights, Sergey Karatanov was going to make his debut, his first fight on U.S. soil since Strikeforce. And he was going to come in and be a force in that division, and he was going to spark the heavyweight division to being respectable again. And he got knocked out by a journeyman with a 9-5 record in the first round, and not just knocked out, but boarded. He was on the ground, stiff and unconscious. So bad weekend for Bellator. On to Fight Night 98. Fight Night 98, Brian. We traded who we picked on 2 of the fights. We both got completely correct. Lamas Oliveira.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Oliveira was dominant in the first round, but he was also 9 pounds overweight, weighing in at 155 pounds. And I don't even think he tried to cut that extra weight. There was a picture on Instagram. I don't know who posted it. I don't think it was him, but he was eating McDonald's 4 days before the fight.
I don't know if you chalk that up to a guy who just has no discipline and really needs a camp to figuratively beat the crap out of him and get him in line with what he needs to be doing as a professional fighter, not joking around, eating junk food, but actually doing what he needs to do in dieting, especially when he cuts as much weight as he does. or if that was he realized he was way off weight, not going to make it, and he didn't want to go through an excruciating cut to go fight 8,000 feet above sea level, and he figured I'll just lose some money, which, by the way, you weigh in overweight like that, he lost 30% of his purse. 30% of his money went to his opponent, and then he lost and he didn't get his win money, so he made nothing.
Not that much at all, and I mean, he deserves to lose 30% of his purse for that.
And again, he looked really good. He looked really good in that fight. He came out in the first round, definitely won the first, had success in the second, transitioned from his back into a takedown, which was beautiful, and in doing so, left his neck open for 3 seconds. And Lamas latched on, cinched it, waited, and then tightened up when he needed to. And Oliveira lasted all of a half a second once Lamas tightened up, and he was already asking out.
Yeah, it was a beautiful arm-in guillotine. Ricardo Lamas, perfect with getting underneath the neck, knew what he needed to do, used his head as leverage, forcing his pressure down on Charles Oliveira's neck. It was unbelievable. And like we said last week, he was going to wait until he had the perfect opportunity and just pounce on it.
Killer instinct. I am going to leave that fight with, this is not good for Oliveira. If you take the top 5 fighters in submission wins in UFC history, Oliveira makes that top 5. There are 4 other men who have as many or more submission wins than him in UFC history. He's the only one in that top 5 to be submitted, and he's been submitted twice. And he just got submitted with an arm-in guillotine. For anybody who watches fighting, you don't get submitted by arm-in guillotines when you're a black belt.
Especially when you're that high level.
When you are a third-degree black belt, you do not get submitted by an arm-in guillotine. That is sad. We saw Diego Sanchez in the same card fight out of a tight guillotine. He got tapped by an arm-in because he's a quitter. I'm going to go ahead and say it. He's a quitter. On to the next fight.
The Diego Sanchez versus Marcin Held fight.
Diego
Perfect
Sanchez,
segue.
Marcin Held.
Fired up tonight, Ian. You are fired up. Getting ready to talk some UFC 205.
Diego Sanchez, Marcin Held. I don't know if we saw Diego go back to his roots and fight like the nightmare he was 5-6 years ago again, or if Held just didn't have it. That was fun. And I still say, having watched that fight, scored it myself at home, Held should have won. Diego took the decision. It's not necessarily a robbery because it was a close fight, but Diego should have not have won that fight, and he got the decision. I can't believe I picked that the way I did last weekend, joking around, and I was right.
Yeah, I was forced to pick that fight. So I was going to try to go with the newcomer, Marcin Held, but I didn't want to. But thanks, B, for making me pick it.
Why is this my fault? Why are you throwing me under the bus?
Because he tried to jump out and not pick the fight. You told him, no, you got to pick.
Well, that's true. We're here to pick fights. You're here to supposed to be experts. You can't just flake out on the listeners like that, France. All right?
Hey, you had to pick it, and you picked wrong.
And you were wrong, sir.
Just eat it.
You were
just eat it.
wrong.
That's why I didn't want to pick the fight, because I knew it was going to be a close fight, especially because I didn't know what Marcin Held was going to come in with.
Okay,
and
so
I
Brian,
knew
what he's
Diego
telling us is he
Sanchez
doesn't
came
pick
with.
them when they're hard.
No. See, what happens is, people kill me at the track all summer picking races, France. It's not always easy, but you got to jump in and make some picks, all right, buddy? It sucks.
All right.
You can't win them all, buddy.
I can't.
You better start winning them all this weekend, though, because people that listen to this are probably going to have some coin, including me, who wants a decent amount of money tonight. So you better not be wrong, France.
Either way, that was a great fight.
No pressure, though.
I like the fact that Diego went back to the older game plan, whether it's because he wanted to or because Held forced him there with leg lock attempts that brought them to the ground. It was fun to see. Maybe Diego's got something left in the tank. Held is only 24. He'll come back. And he's still got tons of potential. So, you want to lead us into the next fight, the last one for the recap?
That Dos Anjos fight versus Tony Ferguson was absolutely amazing. And like we predicted, Tony Ferguson was going to try to go to the outside, not let Diego Sanchez inside and pressure him, and just jab him away, leg kicks, body shots. And watching that fight, he did it to a T.
Absolutely.
His jab was fantastic. He was beating him up, and his eyes were cutting up like crazy.
As we were talking about it when we were watching it, you can still see some holes in Ferguson's game. There's still some things I don't think he does very well that he's going to want to fix before he meets the likes of an Eddie Alvarez or a Conor McGregor or somebody at the very top. But to come in against Dos Anjos, chew him up with those leg kicks, and tricky, nifty leg kicks guys don't use. He was hitting him on the inside of the lead leg. He was hitting him on the calf of the lead leg. He had bruises on his calf the next day. On his calf. Nobody kicks to the calf. And Tony Ferguson chewed it up, and you could tell it was affecting his movement. Straight punches, nice and clean, and his control of the distance is amazing. He's always just at the tip of his opponent's punch. You throw a punch at him, he's just a centimeter too far away. His head movement sucks, but he gets out of the way of it, so his head movement doesn't matter. We're talking technique, nitty-gritty stuff here, but it was impressive. And the motor on those two guys, they went 25 minutes at 100 miles an hour. It was amazing.
Yeah, and Dos Anjos, when he was pressuring, he looked fantastic.
Close fight, 3 rounds to 2, came down to the last minute. Great fight. Nobody loses anything in that. Dos Anjos loses the fight, but nobody loses any respect, and nobody loses their place in the division after that one. Dos Anjos can come back and with 2 wins be back at that title still.
Yeah, and Tony Ferguson just secured the top spot. Obviously, if Khabib does win against Michael Johnson,
it all comes down to what happens at 205 here.
Then we have a different story, but Tony Ferguson definitely deserves the title shot soon enough.
You got your title challenger, your title holder, your number 1 contender, and Michael Johnson all fighting on 205. Going to be crazy. So last thing we're going to talk about before we just dive into UFC 205 and spend the rest of the time talking about that.
Yeah, there was some big news this week, right, Ian?
Yep. John Jones was now stripped of his interim UFC title. It is gone. Second time he's been stripped now by the UFC.
That's the only person that ever gets stripped twice.
Yeah. So USADA comes down and hands him a 1-year suspension for the drug test he failed before the Daniel Cormier fight that never happened. That suspension is not necessarily all he's getting. That's from USADA. That's from the independent contractor that does the drug testing for the UFC. So basically the way to explain that is the UFC has suspended him for a year. The Nevada State Athletic Commission has still not decided what they're doing. They could drop 2 years on him and he has to respect it. Or go fight out of country and never be able to fight here again. And they finally released what it was for. Officially, he has failed his drug test for taking a male enhancement drug.
Attaboy.
So,
attaboy.
There was nothing from a statement from USADA, there was nothing in his drug test that showed that he was taking anything for performance enhancement. It was a recreationally used male enhancement drug that caused his drug test.
So this is all I hear off of that.
That's what we call a sack lunch. Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yep. But they are not happy with him.
Because
think? They feel like on his disclosure forms, every time you take a supplement, you must disclose it to USADA so that they know what's going to be there before you do the drug test. They can go, okay, we expect to see this, we expect to see this, we expect to see this. He has lied, according to USADA, has been less than honest, air quotes,
allegedly,
on all of his last forms that he's handed into them. His disclosure forms have been missing things, and when questioned about it, he has provided multiple different conflicting excuses. So he's not even sure why. He just lies his way through it, and every time's a different excuse that makes the other one untrue.
So I guess my question with that is, so if he comes up and just says, yeah, you know what? I took this. Okay. So is that just him just admitting and then they know he's going to get suspended anyway? Or is that just telling them, okay, wait, you might see this on the test, just giving you a heads up. What happens after that, though? So if I go in, let's say I'm going to get tested, and I say, guys, you might see some Viagra in there. Okay, you might see a little bit of that. Don't worry about it.
Well, things like that are out of competition allowed.
Okay.
Those are allowed out of competition in certain levels. So
all right.
They're claiming what he took was a dirty male enhancement drug that is not supposed to have the substances it had in it, but it did. It had estrogen blockers. It was stopping his body from producing estrogen, which then ramps up the effects of the testosterone in his body. So that's no good no matter what. And they're also used to mask steroid or recover from steroid use.
So it was a juiced up boner pill.
But you're supposed to tell them if you get prescribed something by a doctor, that's allowable use out of competition. So if a doctor prescribed, other than certain things. So you take, I don't know, some form of steroid that is prescribed by a doctor for a heart condition, a serious infection, something like that. You have to disclose that. Hey, it's going to be in there. You even have to disclose creatine say, hey, look, when you check me, you're going to find this, you're going to find this, you're going to find this. Well, he's not listing things, and then he's making up excuses for why he's not listing them. What they're saying is basically, he's cheating. We just can't prove it, but we know he's cheating. So, they're not happy with him.
Well, I could imagine, but I guess, if you're putting it in that sense, so I can go to my doctor and say, hey, I need a script for, I don't know, any male enhancement thing, okay?
Sure.
Write me a script, okay? This is 3 months before I fight.
Oh, well, if you want to get crazy about it, one of the drugs they found was most commonly used by fighters back around 2008 to 2010, UFC 100 era, was Viagra. The night of the fight, guys would take Viagra because now I'm going off of my experience from other parts of my life. Viagra is not
Wait a second. You're going to go off of experience talking about Viagra?
Not personal use.
Wait, no, that's not what you just said.
I'm not saying what I do for a living, but in what I do for a living, I've come across this.
No.
Okay.
No. That's from what I just heard. Okay, we're going to have a talk with your fiance, okay? All right, we're going to have a little talk, a little chat.
In my experience for what I do for a living, Viagra is a heart medication.
Branch, you heard it here first, buddy.
Right. Viagra was designed as a heart med. It was actually designed as a heart medication. They just figured out, hey, look what else it does, and that'll make more money. So that's how they sell it. But it's a heart medication.
Sure. So
guys were taking Viagra before an hour before they got in the cage, and you're never going to know because they're wearing a giant metal steel cup most of the time.
Well, you could still kind of tell. Frank Mir, you could see it.
You could. I'm not staring at crotches in fights, Brian. But
hey, no,
you could have fooled us 5 minutes ago.
Your girl back then was the one pointing that out.
Wow. All right. But
back then,
it increases blood flow to the muscles, and it actually can increase athletic performance and your cardio. So guys were taking Viagra pre-fights. It's not unheard of for guys to take it in training.
Yeah.
But you have to, we're getting screwy now. But either way.
Just remember, Ian, after 4 hours, you got to go see a doctor.
John Jones is stripped of his title, and then Dana White came out with some crazy statements today, talking to Jim Rome on XM Radio. Brian?
Dana White came out and said that he will not have John Jones headline a UFC card for a long time until he sees progress.
He does not trust him to headline a card.
He also said, quote, he is the biggest screw-up ever.
Yep. Biggest screw-up ever in the history of the company, hands down.
And that's not even
that's what guys like Chris Lieben and Mayhem Miller used to fight for this company.
Yeah.
Mayhem Miller got arrested for being naked in a church that he had completely vandalized. And he's not as big a screw-up as John Jones, apparently.
Clearly.
Well, look at what John Jones has done throughout his whole career. When he was 23, 22, 23, 24, he crashes Bentley drunk driving.
With strippers
$1 million
all throughout the car.
Bentley that the UFC gave him.
With 4 strippers in the car.
Man, this guy's living the dream. Oh, never mind.
Then before he fights Anthony Rumble Johnson, gets stripped of his title because he got into a hit and run, had drug paraphernalia in his car, ran back to his car to grab the cash.
Oh, better yet. When that car accident happened, he's driving a rented car. He strikes a pregnant woman who is visibly pregnant.
Yeah.
Hurts her. She's hurt. He takes off.
Bad
enough. Now he comes back
to grab the
car,
cash.
Grabs a wad of cash out of his own car and takes off again. He leaves paperwork from the Nevada State Athletic Commission with his name on it in the passenger seat. Like, well, they're never going to figure out who I am. Really? Dude, all that paperwork has your name on it. There's only one UFC fighter named John Jones, and he's you. So
I'm going to try and make a little correlation here, and you can tell me which you think is worse. Who has screwed up their career more? Okay? John Jones or Josh Gordon? I mean, here's the difference, and you guys can go off of what I say here. Josh Gordon at one point had a season and a half, which was unheard of. But John Jones at one point was on top of the world for UFC. He was the guy.
I've got to say Josh Gordon, because when John Jones comes back, John Jones is still going to have the big fights, and he's still going to make the money. That's it. In the NFL, one man does not make a team. Josh Gordon is not going to come onto a team and immediately make them successful, just like Pac-Man Jones wasn't going to go back to one team and make them great. Mm-hmm. So you don't need him. And the effect he might have for you is not going to be worth the baggage. But John Jones makes the fight, makes the card.
But couldn't you argue right now that the press that John Jones is giving you is actually hurting your brand?
Maybe. But when he comes back and dominates, that's it.
Well,
And
but you're assuming that he will do that.
he
could very well come back and then go and do something stupid again. You just follow the track record at that point.
I think you're going to see him back because I think he's never legitimately lost a fight. He lost one fight in his entire career to Matt Hamill by DQ in a fight that he was absolutely dominating. He's never lost a fight, and people pay to see him lose. People don't like him. He does not have a lot of fans, but people love to try and root against him, and they're going to keep doing it.
People love John Jones because he plays the supervillain extraordinarily well, even though he doesn't mean to.
Yeah, he doesn't even try to. He wants you to like him, and he tries to be. He used to put out this image of super Christian guy who's just a nice guy. He works hard, and he is such a dick. Such a dick.
But he plays it so well.
He's finally accepting it. Finally. I mean, that conversation off air on ESPN with Daniel Cormier. I mean, they don't know the mic is hot, and he's telling Dan, I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to make you cry, Danny. Come on, Dan, I'm going to make you cry, you little fat kid.
I'm going to mess you up.
Oh, he called him fat. He told him he was going to make him cry. I love that. That's fun to watch. I want to watch that guy fight because he's not trying to, look, martial arts, I'm going to bow. I love fighting. No. Yeah, you're fat, and I'm going to make you cry.
Well, isn't that exactly what we're getting right now with Conor McGregor?
Oh, I love it. Conor McGregor. Oh.
It's so amazing.
I love the get up today at the press conference. I love the way he walks in before Eddie Alvarez even gets there. He walks over to Eddie's chair, takes his belt, picks it up, slaps it down in front of his own seat.
Eddie was there, except for the sheer fact that Conor was 20 minutes late. Surprising.
Oh my God, yeah.
Surprising. No. But, all right, yeah. Let's get into this. This was awesome. Okay,
right.
Even me working the show today, God said to me, you know what? You got to get in and watch this press conference and grab as much as you can from it. So, okay. And this legit for me was my first real, watching of a live press conference for a UFC fight. So you can't ask for a bigger one. I mean, it's UFC 205.
And nobody threw anything. They almost threw stuff.
It was insane.
McGregor almost threw a chair, but there were no monster cans and no water bottles thrown in the direction of the crowd today, so nobody will be suspended or fined.
It was nuts, though. Like, it looked like they were ready to go right on the stage.
Oh, my God. Did you not see the last press conference, Diaz-McGregor, before that fight? McGregor's picking up cans of Monster that are full and throwing them at Diaz. Storms out of the conference, and as he's walking out, McGregor's throwing full Monster cans at him, and they're going towards the crowd, and he's just lobbing cans, and by the way, he cannot throw.
Well,
at all.
In his defense,
he doesn't have to.
Nate Diaz or Jake Shields, one of them threw a water bottle at Conor first.
Yeah, and then he starts launching monster cans that weigh 1.5 pounds each, throwing them at people's heads.
Well, that's because he already threw all the water bottles up there. All there was left was monsters.
Oh, my God.
All right. Before we get to picking the card, I just want to ask you this, okay? Now, after watching today, and not, obviously, like I said, it's my first press conference I ever watched. With Conor McGregor being the, person that he is this just a ploy to try and sell for Saturday, or do they legit not like each other?
That depends. There's some guys that legit don't like each other. I think with these two, I don't believe there's any legitimate hatred.
Yeah.
I think they both know how to sell a fight.
It seems that way. I mean, Conor McGregor, every time his fights come around, people know.
Oh, yeah.
Even me. Like, I don't even follow it as well as you guys do. And I know when he's fighting.
There are real grudge matches that happen. As often as the UFC can let them happen, they let them happen. I mean, you go back through the history of the sport, you had Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. That was a grudge match and a half. They were not happy with each other. To this day, they still aren't. They're still making documentaries about it, and it's, over a decade later. Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, McGregor Diaz, Aldo McGregor. They legit do not like each other. This fight, I don't think so. I think Eddie Alvarez is smarter than people give him credit for, and Conor McGregor is a marketing genius.
Yeah, Conor McGregor loves to respect the fighters that he fights, but that's not going to hold him back from talking as much smack as he possibly can so he can sell the fight and make millions and millions off of that.
The key difference will be when this fight is over, win or lose, Conor McGregor will give Eddie Alvarez respect on the mic, more than likely, and he will go up and shake his hand. You will not see Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, where the fight's over, Rousey just beat her for the second time and goes, screw her, and doesn't give her any respect, doesn't help her up off the ground, and just does nothing but talk dirt about her, even though the fight's already done. Like, you already just beat her. There's nothing more embarrassing than getting beat in front of millions of people on television.
Yeah.
And this isn't a football game where you lost. This is a fight where somebody just executed utter dominance over you. They just dominated you. They own you. If you do something stupid in a football game or a baseball game or especially a hockey game, it breaks down into a fight. Because, all right, I'm losing this way, but I'm going to win that way. Well, what do you do when you lose a fight in the UFC? You can't break it down into a fight. You just lost. There's no recourse. You just got owned. It's over. They have your number. They own you. You are theirs. That's the best part about it. So when you see fights where they legitimately don't like each other, you can tell afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
McGregor's going to go up and shake his hand and say, good fight. If he wins, and if he loses, he's going to go, hey, bud, props to you. Going back to 145. That's it.
Oh, man. 1045theteam.com. It's the Fifth Round Podcast. You're listening to. It's UFC 205. We are getting ready for, guys, your host, Ian Foard, Brian France. I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano. Guys, it's time to talk UFC 205. It's time to... Show me the money! Because I won some money tonight. I want to make some more money on Saturday. Let's go over this card. Let the people know what fights they should be watching and who's going to win.
All right, so the first fight we're going to talk about is the fight that's not going to happen on this card anymore. For anybody who was excited, Rashad Evans, winner of the Ultimate Fighter Season 2, versus Tim Kennedy, still part of the military, still active in their training, Ranger, sniper, crazy guy all around. That fight's not happening because Rashad Evans had some form of medical issue that they are not disclosing because it's his personal issue and he doesn't want to. He had an MRI, something showed up. He did more tests, to his knowledge, had the problem taken care of, thought he was ready to fight. He's mid-flight to get to New York a couple days ago, and he gets notified you're not fighting. So the UFC, being awesome as they are, decides to pay Tim Kennedy and Rashad Evans their money, their show money. Nobody gets a win bonus, but they both get their contracted show money. And they reschedule them for UFC 206. So that fight will happen. Anybody who's excited for it. In Montreal, not New York. So we're down one fight. Still the best fight card of all time on paper.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Still, even after losing that. So first fight of the night.
Well, that
we're going to talk about. We're going to skip one or two that we don't feel we want to talk about tonight, but that's on the beginning of the card.
For time purposes,
yeah,
of course.
because we just don't have enough time.
Make sure, I'm sure, France, you run our wonderful social media sites. You'll throw selections up for the people if they want to follow us on there.
Of course,
certain ones.
So,
okay.
First fight we're going to talk about is your Fight Pass online stream headliner, Jim Miller against Thiago Alves. Thiago Alves has not fought since May of 2015, and this is his debut at 155, coming down from 170. Former title challenger at 170, way back at UFC 100.
And we'll mention, of course, for the degenerate gamblers like myself, Alves is minus 160, Jim Miller is plus 140 in this fight.
Wow.
Alves the favorite.
So this is a tricky fight. Miller and Alves have both been around a long time.
Very long time.
Miller 16-7 in the UFC. Alves 13-7. They've been around a while. Like I said, Alves hasn't fought in a long time. His last loss was to Carlos Condit in May of 15. It was his last fight. He's had a lot of injuries. A lot of injuries. Not a lot of bumps and bruises, but a lot of surgeries. And this is going to be his first time trying to come back down to fight at 155. 170 was hard for him to make back in the day, but we haven't seen him in over a year. So you don't really know what he looks like.
Well, there was a picture going around maybe a month or so back, and he looked good. I think he was about maybe 175, 160, looking shredded.
Somewhere around 170 is a manageable cut. It's different than he was cutting from 190 to make 170.
Yeah, 5'9", 190, fine at 170.
Alves has got, for anybody who hasn't seen him fight because he hasn't been around lately, some of the most vicious leg kicks ever. If I had to pick my top three guys for leg kicks in UFC history, it's Pedro Hizzo, Jose Aldo, Thiago Alves. Thiago Alves has monstrous, vicious leg kicks. When he hits people, you don't hear a slap. You hear a thud. And it just looks like his shin digs 3 inches into the meat of their thigh. It's terrible. Jim Miller, all-around tough guy. He's just good everywhere. Jiu-jitsu is his specialty, but he is tough. What do you see happening in this fight, Brian?
I mean, this is a hard fight to pick because Jim Miller coming off his win over Joe Lauzon, that was a scrap to the end with Jim Miller coming out on top. That was probably some of the best I've seen of Jim Miller. He had amazing combos. He was actually pressing the pace instead of sitting and trying to wait for the counters. And he looked great. Now, Thiago Alves, obviously coming off a loss against Carlos Condit, looked amazing in that first round. And we'll have to see how his striking still is and if he still has power, especially dropping down to 155. Because I know he had great hands, crisp striking, amazing Muay Thai clinch work. So it's going to come down to if Jim Miller is able to take down Thiago Alves, he most likely will be able to submit him.
I think that's a definite. For me, the keys here are Alves has got to battle the ring rust in the first round. He hasn't been in a cage in a year and a half. He's going to be a little rusty. So he's got to battle getting back into pace, getting back comfortable in a cage. And he doesn't exactly get a nice, comfy spot to do it. He's at UFC 205 in Madison Square Garden, and he's got to somehow get comfortable in a cage again. He's not in a fight night card in Iowa. He's in Madison Square Garden, and he's got to try and get comfortable. Also, if he's had an issue in the past, it's been cardio. And now he's coming down 15 pounds, which is probably going to hurt his cardio. And he's got to try and last. If it goes 15 minutes, Miller probably wins the fight. But if Alves starts slow in the first 5, that's real trouble because he's going to have the second round to work. If he starts slow in the first 5, that round's garbage. He's going to lose it. If it gets into the third round, he's going to be exhausted. He's going to lose it. So he's got to finish in the second. That's it. I'm hoping the ring rust isn't there. And personally for me, my pick is going to be Alves. And I think it's going to come down to him not starting slow, and he's going to take the decision because he's not finishing Miller. I don't see him finishing Miller. I don't think it's possible. Miller's as tough as they come. He's been knocked out one time in his entire career, and he's had 23 fights in the UFC, plus more outside of it. Yeah. I think it's going to be Alves by knockout, but I would not be surprised to see Miller pounce on him in the first and submit him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Thiago Alves will take this, especially if Jim Miller presses up against him like he did against Joe Lauzon, because Thiago Alves has great why can't I think of the word? Woo!
What are you looking for here? Muay Thai?
No.
Leg kicks? Power? Heart?
He's got great power, but counter striking.
Okay, he has
great counter striking, so
he does.
I think he's gonna try to make Jim Miller miss when he comes in and counter strike him and possibly TKO him in the first, maybe middle of the second round.
See, I don't think he's going to TKO Miller because I don't think Miller gets TKO'd. But there's a lot of things going on. We could dissect this fight, get real technical, and we could spend a lot of time on it. Unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world. But the big things to watch for are going to be the pace that Alves can work at and whether Miller tries to take advantage of those leg kicks. If he tries to key those leg kicks for takedowns, that's risky because you're going to eat them. In order to get a takedown off it, you got to eat it. And Alves has got leg kicks that scare me. I think he could take a tree down with those things if he tried. So if I'm Jim Miller, I don't want to eat a lot of those. I really don't because it'll really affect him. And the more kicks he takes, anybody who hasn't been kicked in the leg that hard, it's like somebody taking the best description I've ever heard from Maurice Smith back in the day was getting kicked in the leg is like somebody taking a baseball bat and slamming it into your thigh. That's what it feels like if the guy knows the guy knows what he's doing. That's what it feels like, a baseball bat upside the thigh. Well, eat 5 of those and see how much pressure, how much you can get into a takedown. How much spring you're going to get out of that lead leg to try and shoot for a takedown when your leg feels like jelly. Imagine the Charlie horse from hell, and that's what you're going to try and shoot off of. Ugh, no thanks. So we're both going to go with Alves. Different methods, but
excellent.
Not very confident in that pick, though.
Ooh, oh my God.
I'm picking it, but it's not like I'm going, it's happening.
Okay.
No. Next up, this
Confidence
is a real
all over this
interesting
program.
one. This is an interesting one, and I am confident as I could ever be in this pick. Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to come up against Michael Johnson. This is a important, very important fight to watch. If you were a fan of the Dos Anjos Ferguson fight, important. If you are a fan of McGregor and Alvarez, important. This is, when it comes down to it, the winner of this fight and Tony Ferguson are going to be neck and neck in the press, screaming at each other for who gets the title shot.
Oh, yeah.
Khabib is 23-0, never lost a fight, 7-fight win streak in the UFC. He just can't stay healthy. and he keeps taking time off for religious holidays, which I understand, but with as often as he's been injured, and then when he's healthy, he's taking time off. He hasn't fought in forever. He's 7-0, but he hasn't fought in so long. Oh, how do you see this one going? What do you think of Michael Johnson? Let's leave Khabib alone for a minute. What do you think of Michael Johnson?
Michael Johnson, I don't think he should be fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov at all. The guy's almost a journeyman right now. He's coming off of a win versus Dustin Poirier, but had lost 2 in a row before that. One of them being Beneil Dariush, who's not even should be in the top 10.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, there's 2 words to describe Michael Johnson, and they're mean, and I'm sorry if you ever listen to this, Michael Johnson. I really am. I like watching you fight. Overrated and streaky, and those are not too good. Those are 2 things that it is not good to be. He's definitely overrated. If you look at his record in the UFC, he's 9-6. 9-6 is not inspiring confidence in me. That's not even as good as Jim Miller at 16-7. 16-7 is a longtime fighter who's won when he's supposed to win, taken some he probably didn't. People probably didn't think he would, and he's faltered at the very top. But he's a solid guy. He's been around for a while, and he always will be. 9-6 is not good. That's not good at all.
And it seems like the way you guys are talking that Vegas is definitely going with you guys too, because Nurmagomedov is minus 285 to Johnson's plus 245, and this just seems like it, and obviously me not being as much of an expert as you guys, this looks like it's not even going to be close.
No, hammer it. Everybody else is going to New York City for the fight tomorrow. Michael Johnson's going to Suplex City. That's what's happening. Michael Johnson's going to get thrown around that cage like a rag doll. If you've never seen Khabib fight and you like watching guys get slammed on their head, tune in, because he's just going to pick him up and slam him down over and over and over.
Khabib literally wrestles bears in Russia.
Yeah, when he grew up, he wrestled bears to train. That's not even like it's not hyperbole. We're not being jerks. He wrestled bears. His dad trained him and made him wrestle bears.
There's videos out there.
You hear that, Ed? Bears.
Yeah, like black bears, like scary.
That's messed up, man.
He beat Dos Anjos. His big claim right now is that he should have been at a title shot forever ago. If he wasn't constantly getting hurt, he would have been. When Dos Anjos won that title, he had lost a fight to Khabib where Khabib took him down like 13 times in 3 rounds. I mean, we're talking 13 takedowns in 3 rounds. One, that means the guy's getting back up a lot, but it's because Khabib, every time he got up, needed 3 seconds to get hands on him and put him back on his head. And these aren't little pitter-patter takedowns. This isn't even Brock Lesnar shooting a tackle and getting it. This is Khabib picking you up and suplexing you into next week over and over and over.
It was pure dominance.
So we can all agree right now that you got to take him.
Khabib,
even with the massive favorite.
Khabib wins this fight by murder. That's pretty much
murder.
How it goes. Yeah, it's going to be a decision.
I don't have that on my sheet.
Close.
I don't have that. For some reason, one of the decisions here isn't murder, but I'm sure we can. It's a write-in.
Yeah,
just like the election, you can just write it in. That's fine.
Realistically, Khabib by decision. He's not a finisher,
okay,
but he is utterly dominant. There's no question when it comes to his decisions. You can't even think the other way.
France, where are you going there?
Exactly the same. Khabib
decision.
Yeah, because Michael Johnson really doesn't get finished either.
No.
Okay.
And I'll go out on a limb right now and say Khabib probably doesn't get the next title shot, because if he does, I don't care if it's Alvarez or McGregor, Khabib wins that fight. If it's McGregor, most certainly. Ooh. McGregor's got one chance, and that is to land a big punch right away, or Khabib is going to throw him around.
Yep.
It's going to happen. He's the dark horse that nobody's been talking about, because it's hard to pronounce his name, and he's Russian, and he doesn't fight often enough, but he will throw McGregor around like a child.
Ian, this is what I have to say to that comment.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I mean, that's a bold statement, and we're going to hold you to that.
This is
episode
the guy to
3.
watch.
Okay,
if
episode 3, 39 minutes in. There it is.
If you are looking to watch UFC 205 for McGregor, and you are a McGregor fan, make sure you watch the prelims, not just the main card. Don't just pay for the main card and watch it. Watch the prelims too, because you're going to see a guy like Khabib, and that's the next guy in line. If it's not Tony Ferguson, it's Khabib. They might wait, but it's going to be Khabib.
Yeah, Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor, and Eddie Alvarez are all praying that Khabib does not win on Saturday night.
1045theteam.com. It's the Fifth Round Podcast here with your host, Ian Foard, Brian France. I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano. All right, guys, let's continue moving on this card, man. Fast moving. We got a lot of picks here. People are interested. Where are we going next, Ian?
Next one up, you have Frankie Edgar, Jeremy Stevens.
Another big favorite.
Your former lightweight champ and former featherweight title challenger. He just lost his bid to Jose Aldo, and a heartbreaker for him. He's getting older now, 35 years old, but he is fighting in what is basically going to be his hometown. He's from Toms River, New Jersey. He spends a lot of time in the city. Frankie Edgar, Jeremy Stevens. What do you think, Brian?
I'm going with Frankie Edgar all the way. The guy is quick, fast, strong, has amazing wrestling, has great combinations, works with Mark Henry, and he listens to everything Mark Henry says in his corner. They mix up everything from striking to wrestling all at once. And Jeremy Stevens, I mean, he's got power, but he's not going to be able to finish Frankie Edgar.
Absolutely. And for Frankie Edgar, in 8 years, it's been over 8 years, he has lost to two men, Ben Henderson twice, Jose Aldo twice. If that's the only people you lose to in an 8-year career, that's crazy. That's good enough for me. That puts him at 25-1 because he lost one fight early on in his career and he drew with Gray Maynard. Which, if you want to go further than that, that means he's lost once to Gray Maynard and drew once with Gray Maynard. He's lost twice to Ben Henderson and twice to Jose Aldo. You got to be the best of the best to even get close to not losing to this guy. And he wins in every way, shape, or form. Jeremy Stevens, on the other hand, he's got a UFC record of 13-11. If you thought 9-6 was bad. And I love Jeremy Stevens. The guy's a warrior. He is nothing but power, offense, and craziness. But he's nothing but power, offense, and craziness. Defense is an afterthought. Complete afterthought. Frankie Edgar, I don't even think we need to take a lot of time picking this.
No.
Frankie Edgar by a wide margin unless Jeremy Stevens lands a crazy shot. We saw him knock Dos Anjos out with the craziest uppercut I've ever seen. He literally pulled that from the other side of the cage.
Very long time.
Very long time ago. But he's all power. He's got a great chin. I don't think he gets knocked out.
No.
I think he gets submitted or decisioned. More than likely it's going to be a decision, but he's not going to be able to deal with the speed, the combination punching, the footwork, the head movement, just the all-around excellent boxing that Frankie Edgar's going to show. Probably the best boxer in the UFC. Better than Nate Diaz.
Frankie Edgar's probably one of the best fighters to watch if you're trying to look at the least amount of damage that can be taken.
Are you watching the same Frankie?
Come
on, he gets beat up. He gets beat up.
But when he goes in, he gets right out.
He does. There are problem is when he does get hurt, he gets hurt.
It just shows easier than most people.
But he's got heart. Look at the Gray Maynard fight, man. He got cartwheeled across the cage 3-4 times, almost knocked out. I won't say he doesn't take damage, but I'd say Frankie is easily the most artful boxer that you're ever going to see in the cage. It's obviously he's no Floyd Mayweather. If you're talking about just boxing, then you're going to have a better guy.
But for MMA,
Frankie is masterful. Amazing boxer. He wins that by a landslide and a decision unless a Hail Mary punch lands. And I think that's all we really need to say about that fight.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at a few articles here to try and catch up on, and Patrick Stumberg of MMAmania.com says that Frankie Edgar is by far his best bet on that card.
Oh,
even with the line the way it is, it's by far his best bet on the card.
What is the line on that one?
Frankie Edgar is minus 340. Jeremy Stevens is plus 280.
Yeah.
He suggests that you bet Frankie Edgar straight up and also parlay with a few different choices.
I mean, if you want a guarantee for me for a win, parlay Frankie Edgar and Khabib.
Yeah.
And if you want to make some money on top of that, I'm not going to guarantee it, but a real smart bet is to parlay Frankie Edgar and Khabib both by decision, because that's very likely bet.
He says Frankie Edgar and Donald Cerrone.
Donald Cerrone is his other one.
Yep.
Well, we're getting to that fight very soon.
Let's move on to our next one, fellas.
Yep. So, next fight, Miesha Tate, Rocky Pennington. Miesha Tate, Raquel Pennington is a good fight. I won't say it's an amazing, crazy fight, but it's a very good fight.
It's going to be way more interesting than people are going to believe it to be.
Yeah, and this is actually, for me, this is a tough pick. Miesha Tate has got a great record. Miesha Tate, through Strikeforce and the UFC, is 11-5. And those are losses to the Kat Zinganos, Ronda Rouseys, and Amanda Nunes of the world. She doesn't lose to nobodies. She generally finds success against anybody but the very top shelf. And the top shelf, she falters sometimes. It's generally because somebody has more power than she does. I don't know if Rocky Pennington's going to be able to do that. I really don't. Rocky Pennington, you look at her, she's not really great anywhere at all, but she's scrappy enough somehow. She makes it work.
She makes every fight into a dogfight and is always in it, even though she shouldn't be.
I mean, her fight against Holly Holm, I thought she won. That was Holly Holm's debut. I thought Rocky beat her, and she really, it came close. It was a split decision, and I thought Raquel Pennington won that fight. Since then, she's beaten up on some good fighters. Oh, wait, no, I take that back. She hasn't. She hasn't really beaten up on anybody. She beat up on Betch Kahea, who I think is probably one of the worst 135ers the UFC's got. She brawls, and she brawls sloppily with no strategy, no power, no ability to do much of anything. She beat Jessica Andrade, who's now fighting 115, and she beat Elizabeth Phillips,
who's only had one win in the UFC.
This is a tough fight to pick because you don't know based on the strength of their competition what's going to happen. Tate did just lose. I think Tate wins. I don't really know how she's going to win. I guess I'm going to have to go decision because I don't think that Rocky is going to get knocked out at all. No way. And I don't really see Tate taking her down and submitting her. Wouldn't surprise me if she won by submission, but I've got to go with Tate. I hate to pick all the favorites right now, but I've got to go with Tate.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going to. Miesha Tate has a hell of a lot of heart, and she has some of the best skills in the 135-pound division, except for those top girls like Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey.
And that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is the first fight on a 6-fight main card. That's the first fight.
They actually had to add an hour to the main card for pay-per-view.
Yeah, you're paying for an extra fight if you buy the pay-per-view. Well, you're not paying for it, but you're getting it.
You're getting one, yeah,
so,
for the same amount that you're normally paying for before. And this one, Miesha Tate is minus 175, Pennington is plus 155, which I think is right exactly where it should be, right?
That sounds right, but I honestly would have made Tate a higher favorite. Yeah. I would have made her a bit more of a favorite. I mean, this is a former champ who has lost to Ronda Rousey, lost to basically 2 champs and Kat Zingano. And Rocky Pennington has yet to get a quality win in there. That doesn't mean you're not good. Tony Ferguson didn't have a quality win until he took out Dos Anjos last weekend. But Rocky's never showed those kind of skills. So I don't see it happening. And I think Tate's just going to have skill advantages in a lot of places. Not necessarily athleticism advantages, but skill advantages.
No matter what, this fight is going to be a big start to this main card. It's going to be a fantastic dogfight to the end.
And now we get into the fights I'm really actually... I'm excited for most of this, but I am really excited for these ones. Donald Cerrone gets a shot at Kelvin Gastelum and legitimate contender status in the top 10 at 170. This is a guy who fights 1 million times a year, is crazy exciting, made it to the top of the ladder almost in 155, came up to 170, has looked great, and this is the cornerstone win he needs to really legitimize himself at 170. He's got 3 wins, but nobody earth-shattering. Good quality wins. Not earth-shattering. This puts him into some serious contention, and if you haven't seen Cerrone fight, Cowboy is as exciting gets. So I'm really excited for this. Do you think he's going to be able to stop the takedowns of Kelvin Gastelum?
It's going to be rough. I mean, at 170, he's looked the best he has ever looked. He just beat up on Rick Story, who Rick Story tried to take him down. He was stuffing him like crazy, and he actually took Rick Story down, which is hard to do.
It normally when guys go up a weight class, I look at it and go, "Wow, this is not going to be good. It's just not going to work." Somehow Cerrone changed his game. He packed on that extra weight, stopped trying to keep so lean, which he loves. He loves drinking his Budweisers. Talks about it all the time. That guy put on
calling the kettle there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, bud.
No problem.
He packed on some weight, and that really translated to power in the cage. Before, it was, watch out for Cerrone's Muay Thai. It's good. His knees are great. His kicks are great. And off his back, he can be dangerous. Now, all of a sudden, he's taking people down and submitting them from the top. I mean, he just won not too long ago by an inverted triangle from the top, which is crazy. He's also suddenly got power in his punches, which is nuts. And Kelvin Gastelum, he doesn't look as good as he did a year ago, and Cerrone looks that much better. Now, the X factor here is Gastelum has trouble making weight at 170. He's huge.
So he's the biggest guy down Cerrone. He's definitely fought.
I think he's probably the biggest guy at 170. He actually standing next to Tyrone Woodley makes Woodley look small, and Woodley looks huge.
He looks like a superhero, Tyrone Woodley.
He is the biggest guy in that division. And Cerrone came up from lightweight. He's not a very big guy for that division. But if I'm picking this, I think Cerrone's going to be able to make some moves. Nobody's been able to hold him down, and he's been able to work off his back to get submissions and cinch him, or at least get back to his feet. And on the feet, man, he's going to put on a show. He's going to make Gastelum hurt. He really is.
So now I'm really interested to see, because I'm reading off a lot of these articles we have over here. So Patrick Stumberg of MMAmedia.com, Donald Cerrone's a minus 155, Gastelum is plus 135, and he says Cerrone is his safest investment on the card by the odds, simply because Gastelum presents no issues and hasn't brutally dealt with this type of person in the past. He has good power and a terrific transition game, but his Brazilian jiu-jitsu pales in comparison to Cerrone, and I'm not sure he wants any part of him while standing on his feet.
Oh, absolutely. Gastelum is a very basic striker on his feet. Very basic. Donald Cerrone is the epitome of a professional kickboxer. He knows how to link his knees, his kicks. A lot of guys, you see basic combinations. Like we were talking about with the Phil Davis fight at Bellator last weekend. Phil Davis is so basic, it is a 1-2, a jab, right, straight. Or it's a left hook followed by a right straight. Or it's a jab and a right hook. Or it's 1-2 and a leg kick. He doesn't vary things. You see the same pattern over and over again, and if you fight a very good striker, even I can recognize the pattern pretty quick. Oh, he threw the jab, watch out for the right hand, and then a left leg kick coming right behind it. It's a very basic pattern. Donald Cerrone comes in very stuffed to crazy angles. He throws the same punch like a pitcher will change arm angles. Donald Cerrone will change punch angles. At the same time, he changes the angle he's at when he comes in. First time he comes to your left. Second time he comes to your right. Then he comes to your right, slides to your left. Crazy stuff like that just sets where you defend from totally different. And he's nuts with it. And he can throw kicks from angles that people can't throw kicks from.
Yeah, his kicks are basically extension of his arms.
Yeah, his dexterity is insane. And not to mention, Brian, you've seen him in the clinch. He's a monster.
Yeah, and then especially with Kevin Gastelum, he's going to want to try to get in on Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone's knee, when people come in to keep them at bay, is probably one of the best in the UFC right now.
You read my mind. I was going to say, watch out for the body shots. I see body kicks. I see knees to the solar plexus when he tries to come in. And I see the biggest problem being the same issue Rick Story had. He's a wrestler. Rick Story is predominantly trained as a wrestler. He was a wrestler before he got into MMA, and that's what he likes to do. So he stands very square, way too square. He doesn't angle his body much. He presents a big, thick target. And Gastelum's a wrestler. He stands very square, presents a big, thick target. And the bigger you are, the bigger your target is. And he's a big guy, which can be good in the grappling and very bad in the striking, because you now have more surface area for Donald Cerrone to target his punches, and you got to block more. I think Cerrone's going to be able to work this out. I'm not going to go ahead and say how, because I don't know. Cerrone's got too many weapons.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, if somehow Kevin Gastelum is able to take it to the ground without getting almost KO'd right before he does, Cerrone can easily submit him with a triangle, armbar, almost anything.
And he's not afraid to use those submissions to get back on his feet either, which is one of the biggest changes. I wouldn't be surprised for him to hurt Gastelum and take him down like he did Story. I think Cerrone works this out, without a doubt. That's my pick. I'm honestly, I can't set my mind onto how he's going to do it. I could see him doing some damage to the body and then cinching up a rear naked when he takes the back. I could see him doing some damage to the body and finishing up top. I could see him landing a crazy knee and knocking him out. I could see this going decision.
It could go so many different ways in the positive for Donald Cerrone, and not too many ways for Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum.
I will say, if Gastelum's going to win, it's not going to be exciting, more than likely, for the majority of the fight, because he will take, if he can get Cerrone on the fence, say that happens, he gets him on the fence, Cerrone's in trouble. Gastelum's very big and will just press his weight into Cerrone and take the life right out of him. He will suck energy from him by making him carry his weight and just laying there on the fence until the ref breaks him. But every time the ref breaks him, Cerrone gets another shot at his head, or at his ribs, or at his legs.
Yeah, Kelvin Gastelum has a lot of good things going for him. He's big, he's strong, he has great wrestling. I don't know if it's going to be enough to take out Donald Cerrone, but if he's able to somehow manhandle Donald Cerrone on the ground and keep him there, he might be able to squeak out the decision, but it's most likely Donald Cerrone all the way.
All right, so we're both going to go with Cerrone on that one. Next up,
another superhero on this in this fight,
Chris Weidman, Yoel Romero. This is a great fight. You have two one-loss fighters. Two one-loss fighters who are inches away from a title shot. Luke Rockhold just got hurt. He just went down. He's injured. He's out. Weidman Romero is basically a title eliminator at this point. It looks that way to me. There's nobody left. These are the top two guys. Weidman and Romero, whoever wins that fight gets Michael Bisping. And I don't want to count Bisping out. I don't want to talk ill of the champ, but whoever wins this fight, look, they gave him Dan Henderson. He got the old washed up guy to get that defense on his belt, to get that on his mantle. Whoever wins this fight's taking Bisping's belt. It's more than likely what's going to happen.
Most likely.
You line up either one of these guys against Michael Bisping, and he's an underdog. He's champ, but he's a heavy underdog.
And that's how Michael Bisping's been his whole career. But we'll talk about him later. We're on to Chris Weidman, Yoel Romero right now.
All right, so when you look at this fight, what do you see, Brian?
I see Chris Weidman taking it. I know I kind of put my foot in my mouth yesterday thinking Weidman's wrestling is better than Yoel Romero's.
We were discussing this fight yesterday. Brian said he thought Weidman was going to out-wrestle Romero, and I got a little perturbed.
So this is the one you guys got a little heated on.
Just one of them.
Yeah, we got a little heated on the statement that Weidman was going to out-wrestle Romero. Romero is an Olympic wrestler for Cuba. One of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the Olympic program at Cuba.
Is that how he got his nickname, the Soldier of God?
Oh, well.
Oh, that's not it.
I don't want to get you going on that. I just found that really interesting. Though,
and if he says something in the cage after the fight, people, remember he's got a Cuban accent, please. If he says, don't forget Jesus, remember it means don't forget Jesus. Don't misinterpret it as something else, because that's what happened last time, and it was really not good. I'm not going to say. No. I'm not going to say what people thought he said.
We'll keep that PG.
But it was...
he has a very strong accent, so...
Yeah, so give the guy a break. But Brian thought... And I don't know, do you still stand by that? Do you think he's going to out-wrestle Romero? Because wrestling in the Olympics and in wrestling is not wrestling in a cage. Yeah. It is different.
Chris Weidman has some of the best MMA wrestling for the 185-pound division, and he uses it very well.
He does. I'm still going to stand by and say Yoel Romero is a legend in the world of Olympic wrestling and in the world of Cuban Olympic wrestling. And Weidman, sure, you were a college All-American. Congratulations. I could point out a lot of college All-Americans at wrestling. Not that that's not an accomplishment, but how many college All-Americans have you seen wrestle in the UFC? He was not an Olympic caliber wrestler. Now, Romero's
Lesnar.
Up there.
Brock Lesnar.
Lesnar at least had a championship or more than one.
Valid.
Weidman never even had one. So,
valid. Congratulations.
You were D1 All-American. I applaud you for that. Great. But I don't think you're going to out-wrestle Romero. I think you might outstrike him.
He's definitely going to outstrike him.
I think your jiu-jitsu's better than his. I think you have a lot of advantages against him in cardio. But I don't think you're going to out-wrestle him. And God forbid you get punched by him. Yoel Romero has the power that Dan Henderson wishes he had. Okay, Yoel Romero hits things and they break. If he went over and punched Madison Square Garden before the thing, you wouldn't have a fight card because the arena might implode. All right, he could knock over the Empire State Building. That guy hits
like a truck. I think we're
you
getting
get it.
a little...
You get it. Are you picturing what I'm seeing? If you've seen Yoel Romero fight, you would understand.
It's like the day after tomorrow with MMA fighters. Jesus.
No, listen, if you saw him fight and you saw him hit somebody...
I will.
God.
In less than 2 days.
Don't get me wrong. I love Yoel Romero. But Chris Weidman is definitely going to take this fight.
Here we go, boys. Let's go.
Yoel Romero's going to come out strong in the first round.
Okay.
He may take it, but then he's going to gas like crazy in the second. Chris Weidman's going to capitalize on that, take the second and third round. Easy.
I'll give you that. Romero is a tough guy to even pick. I mean, have you ever seen a guy who looks more like, I don't know, an old school NFL fullback? He looks like a fullback. He's just all traps, short little guy, stocky as all hell, built. But he moves graceful as you could ever want. Great movement, fast, really fast. Well, not fast, but quick. Very quick to the punch. Pulls the trigger quick. And he's going to go up against Weidman, who, again, has been nothing but hurt lately. Nothing but hurt. And if you do take a look at Weidman's record, I know we're talking about a former champ here, but what if I told you that in his last 6 wins, he beat Damian Maia at 185, when Damian Maia should not have been at 185. 170 is what's healthy for him. He beat Mark Munoz. How many fights did Mark Munoz win after that one, Brian? One. Until and Luke Barnett is not a great win. Then he beat Anderson Silva twice, and people still question those wins. I understand he beat Anderson Silva, the legend. Silva was goofing around and got knocked out.
Just like he always does. So I'm not going to take that away from him.
And then he broke his leg. Okay.
That one.
And then he beat Lyoto Machida and Vitor Belfort off the roids.
Lyoto Machida looked amazing coming down to 185 for that, before the fight before that.
Lyoto Machida looks like a shadow of his former self.
Not when he first cut weight. When he first dropped to 185, he looked fantastic.
Okay, sure, he did. But that was well after he first dropped to 185. He looked great against Mark Munoz. He looked great against Gahard Mousasi. And then he fought too many times. This is when Lyoto Machida's camp was begging him to take time off. That's when he fought Chris Weidman. Right. When they were begging him, please take 6 months. You need it. You're so beat up. You're so worn down.
So where are we going here, fellas? Obviously, there's a disagreement here. Are we going a disagreement with the pick of the fight?
I think we probably are.
I'm going Chris Weidman decision.
Okay, now I know the betting line's probably Weidman.
Let's see. We got Chris Weidman, Bueller. Where did it go? There it is. Son of a gun. Weidman is minus 165. Romero is plus 145.
Plus 145. All right, so it's not that big of an underdog. But for me, this is my dark horse underdog pick. Nobody thinks he stands a chance. The betting line's close, but all the pundits, all the main websites, all the main sports writers are thinking Weidman's going to take this. I think Romero's going to take it. I'm not impressed by Weidman. I think Weidman he's very good. He's excellent, and he should be the favorite. He should. But I don't think he's as good as everybody wants him to be. And I also think he's very worn down. He's had injuries over and over again. His knee and his back are torn up. And Romero's coming in on a long layoff, nice and healthy, old. He's got one more shot at this. And I think he's going to knock Weidman straight out. I think you're going to see Chris Weidman laying on his back. He's going to wake up to bright lights and a soft voice telling him, it's okay. It's okay. And that's how this fight ends. That's my pick.
All right.
1045theteam.com, the Fifth Round Podcast, here with your host, Ian Foard, Brian France. I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano. Dude, we got 3 fights left. Ian, lead us off, man. Where are we going now?
All right. All we got left is the title fights. Your first one, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because it's a pretty straightforward fight. Brian was just letting us know this is the widest betting line, the widest margin of betting line in the entire card.
And it deserves to be that.
Yes. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is going to fight Karolina Kowalczyk. I hate those last names.
Seriously, look at these.
They're
Jędrzejczyk is
Polish.
minus 410.
Both Polish fighters. Now, this is real straightforward. Joanna is all aggression. She comes forward. She throws a lot of punches, high volume, great pace. Kowalczyk is the definition of a slow and steady counter striker. She's been criticized in the past for being too slow and too steady. If this goes to decision, Joanna takes it because she's going to take rounds on pure volume. Unless Kowalczyk can drop her and do serious damage, Jędrzejczyk takes it because the volume and the pressure is going to get her points. More than likely, I think Jędrzejczyk's going to finish it in the championship rounds because she's just got too much for Kowalczyk. She's too slow, too plodding, too steady. Not going to work.
Yeah, listeners, listen, we love this fight, but it's too easy. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's just going to murder Karolina. It's just not even fair.
All right, next up. Now, this is where they get real interesting. The welterweight title is on the line. Tyron Woodley, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy is the next big thing, the Karate Kid coming up. Great movement, great style, different than what you've seen. Knocked off some former champs. Tyron Woodley is getting a lot of criticism because, one, let's be honest, he's got a big mouth. And two, people are questioning the legitimacy of his title.
And that's definitely showing in the Vegas line here because Thompson is actually minus 200 to Woodley's plus 175 right now.
Yep.
Oof. So a champion as an underdog. Where are we going here, fellas?
This one is, me and Brian got into quite the debate about this yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is going to happen, Brian?
I think Tyron Woodley's going to take this. I think he's going to either get him in the first or second.
Okay. And exactly what I said to you yesterday. whatever you smoked before we walked in this room, you need to share it because it's great if it's making you think like that. Tyron Woodley has got two things going for him. He's got explosive power.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Explosive power, and he is very quick. Ton of fast twitch muscle fibers. That is going to be the absolute kryptonite that will kill him against Wonderboy Thompson, who is the master of distance and angles. He's going to be so far out in his kicking range where he wants to keep you that Woodley would have to take 3 steps running Ronda Rousey style at Holly Holm to even touch him. And by the time he gets to where Wonderboy was, he's going to be 2 feet the opposite direction, punching him in the head. He's not even going to be able to touch him. He does not have the ability and the skill to get there. He's going to need a takedown. Not to mention, Wonderboy loves to drag fights out a little bit, to just make you get to him, make you work for it. Woodley's got no cardio. Okay? Woodley probably can't finish a 3-mile run. That's been the biggest criticism of his whole career. He landed a lucky punch on Robbie Lawler, who made a career out of standing in front of you and getting punched in the head and giving 2 back better. But he finally stood in front of a guy who punches too damn hard. Wonderboy ain't standing anywhere. He doesn't stand still ever. Even when he's standing still, he's moving. And he's going to be moving out of the way and chopping Woodley apart. That's what I see. I mean, if you see something different.
I saw some holes in Stephen Thompson's game when he fought Rory McDonald. The number one thing which Rory never capitalized on was leg kicks. He left that lead leg wide open, which for a karate guy, that's exactly how the stance is. But if Tyron Woodley is able to expose that and use that to his advantage, he's going to make Stephen Thompson slow in that first round, and he's going to be able to come in explosive in that second round and knock him out.
Okay, I'll give you that, but this is my defense to that. Wonderboy stands on a karate stance and leaves that lead leg out there because all the weight is on the back foot. The lead leg is loose. You hit it, you don't hurt it. You hit it, you don't hurt it. It's almost checking a kick without checking a kick. Also, Woodley throws awful leg kicks. They are powerful. They are slow and awkward, and he'll pay for them. I just don't see it. I don't see any path to victory for Tyron Woodley other than getting inside, bull rushing, and landing an extremely lucky Hail Mary punch. I see no path to victory. I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is the future of that division, at least for a little while. It's the most competitive division in the UFC, in my opinion. More competitive than 155. And that title changes hands like hotcakes since GSP. So, but I still think Wonderboy comes in and he's going to have it for at least a year or more. To me, Tyron Woodley stands no chance.
I mean, Stephen Thompson hasn't fought anyone with as much power, much explosive quickness as Tyron Woodley has.
And I hate to play the MMA math game, but again, who did Tyron Woodley beat other than the champ? Sure, he beat Robbie Lawler. Like I said, he landed a good punch. Kelvin Gastelum, Young Hung Kim blew Carlos Condit's knee out, or Carlos Condit blew his knee out, whichever way you want to take it. He didn't win that fight. That wasn't a legit fight. And then Josh Koscheck. He's got no wins. He lost to Jake Shields and Rory McDonald and Nate Marquardt in recent memory. And how many of those guys are still in the UFC? Tyron Woodley, paper champ. And he's not going to be for long.
Yeah, but Thompson really hasn't beat that impressive guys either. Rory McDonald is his best win, and that's Rory coming off of a broken nose against Robbie Lawler. And his mental game after that fight was
But he
way
looked
off.
foolish. He looked foolish. Rory McDonald looked foolish in that fight because he just didn't know how to work against Thompson's game. Thompson's biggest advantage is he works a game plan and a style that no one else does. So you can't train for what you can't see. And the first time you actually are in a cage against somebody fighting that way, it's him. I can game plan for Tyron Woodley with a guy who wrestles at any high school around here. Come here. Here's how you throw a haymaker. Stand in front of me and let's train. How do you train for Stephen Thompson? Nobody does it. Nobody fights that way. Tyron Woodley fights like every wrestle brawler ever. That's it. It's sprawl and brawl without skill.
I'm just playing devil advocate. I don't think Stephen Thompson's...
Here's my pick.
Boy.
Stephen Thompson, TKO in a second.
I'm going Tyron Woodley second round.
Oh, man, I cannot wait to watch this fight with you guys on Saturday. It's going to be crazy. But let's move on. Gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. Everybody's been talking about this fight for the last month or so, and especially with today being the wonderful press conference we touched on at the beginning of the podcast. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez. McGregor, minus 170. Alvarez plus 150. Are you surprised by that betting line yet?
I am.
Honestly, I think it should be even money across the board.
Ooh, okay. All right.
I think
All right.
it should be a little closer. I don't think Eddie Alvarez gets a lot of respect from some people, but he hasn't been around as champ for a while, and a lot of his fights weren't in front of the main audience of the UFC. But I still think McGregor's the favorite.
Well, our boy Patrick Summer, the one I've been watching over here at MMAmania.com, in his article says also he loves the fact that you're getting the price on Eddie Alvarez right now. He takes Eddie Alvarez in that pick, especially with the odds he's taking right now. He doesn't believe that Conor McGregor should be that type of favorite and that this fight is actually very, very close. Gentlemen, what do we see here? What can we expect Saturday night? What kind of fight is this going to be?
Well, the biggest things that stand out to me, Eddie Alvarez has a lot of similarities to Nate Diaz in his style, in his boxing style, in his aggressive style, in the way he likes to work. But the key pieces that make it work for Diaz against McGregor are not there. The length, the durability,
the volume of punches.
Oh, it's very similar. He doesn't
throw as much as the Diaz brothers.
Nobody throws as much as the Diaz brothers, but you'd be surprised if you looked at the numbers how much Eddie does throw. It's huge. If you watch the Pettis fight, you don't realize it. But when he stands there, he throws a lot of punches. It's the same boxing style. He's very good. He doesn't have the length. He doesn't have the durability and cardio. And he doesn't have the jiu-jitsu. So the three things that really make Diaz scary and the perfect foil to Conor aren't there. If you picked a fighter made to beat Conor, it would look a lot like Nate Diaz. While Eddie has some of those things, he doesn't have all of them. Also, Eddie has a very bad tendency to get hurt in the first round. Now, remind you, Eddie Alvarez has never been knocked out cold. He's been TKO'd, I believe, once. But he's never been knocked out cold. But he's been wobbled and hurt a lot.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. He gets caught, and he somehow survives. It's Frankie Edgar-esque almost. Problem is, that ain't against Conor McGregor. There's a difference between getting wobbled by Michael Chandler and getting hit by Conor McGregor. That's like Chuck Liddell back in the day. You could take a shot from most guys, but if you took it from Chuck, you were out. He's just got that next level power. I don't know if he's going to be able to survive that. Now, if Eddie can push the pace and survive, if this goes late rounds, I think Conor's in trouble. I think he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, to Conor's defense, he was up to 170, so all that extra weight does crush your cardio.
But now he's cutting weight.
He is cutting weight, but he's not cutting as much weight as he has to get down to 145, and he has been working on his cardio from things on the internet. And
you're always working on your cardio, but let's just go. If we go off of their track record, Conor's never had great cardio. He's always had suspect cardio.
Of course.
If this goes 3, 4, and 5, 3 is a crapshoot, 4 is Eddie, 5 is Eddie.
Especially because Eddie does like to pressure the pace. He likes to go in, make sure he's trying to bully you, just like he did against Anthony Pettis.
And he game plans. He's very smart.
He's very smart at game planning, but I don't think anyone's better at game planning than Conor McGregor.
It depends. But to see Conor never really game planned. Conor Chad Mendez, what was his game plan? Punch him in the head really hard. Conor Jose Aldo, punch him in the head really hard.
Yeah, but if you watch the backstage tape of Conor McGregor before he fought Jose Aldo, he was
ready for that exact punch and that exact movement.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But his meta game plan is really good, which now again we're gonna go off on a tangent here and get too technical. Conor prepares for certain strikes and certain movements, but he doesn't have a solid, rock solid, this is my plan for the whole fight. He takes it as it comes and has practiced certain movements and situations. Eddie plans the fight and how he wants it to happen the whole way through, and if it works that way, he wins. If it doesn't, well, now we're in trouble. He just gets punched in the head and he's wobbled and he's running across the cage without even knowing where he is against Chandler. And then it turns into a dogfight. And if it turns into a dogfight, he's going to lose because he's got average power and McGregor puts people to sleep.
Yeah. And Conor's much faster. Eddie's a little bit slower than Conor McGregor, and he doesn't have as much power as Conor McGregor.
I don't know if I'd call him slower. I don't know. It depends. I mean, it depends on the Alvarez fight. Some fights he doesn't look too quick, and then you watch him against some other guys, and he looks like a little Tasmanian devil running across the cage. Depends. God, this is a tough fight.
It really is.
His wrestling's going to be better than Conor's, but Conor's going to probably be able to pop back up from time to time. He's got to watch getting stuck on against the fence. If you're Conor, you don't want to be against the fence. And Eddie's got that sneaky boxing game where he's going to land some punches. And if Conor gets wild and lets his hands drop and goes for all power shots, he's going to lose. If he tries to kick, he's probably going to get taken down. But at the end of the day, I can't go against Conor, and I honestly think Conor's going to end this one in the first round with a knockout. I think he's going to knock him cold.
Really?
Eddie gets hurt. Every fight, it seems like, Eddie gets hurt early. And you can't get hurt by McGregor. He's got the killer instinct, and he's got the power. I think Eddie's going night-night sometime in the first round.
Now, I would love to go against you with Eddie Alvarez just to make it interesting, but I can't do that. I can't go against Conor McGregor. He's got just something about him where he really shouldn't lose this fight.
I mean, I got to tell you, if Conor wins this, he goes from the biggest star of today to maybe the biggest star ever. We're talking 2 belts at the same time. It's never been done in the UFC.
No.
It's never been done outside of Dan Henderson and Pride in a major, legitimate top 1 or 2 MMA organization in the world. And even Dan's belts and Pride were a bit crazy. If he does this, he transcends the sport. That's it. And I don't know how that looks for the UFC business-wise because he's already punching his own ticket wherever he wants to go. And now he's got 2 belts. And he is the man. Not like they haven't stripped a champ before. They've done it. But this is crazy. Now, if Eddie wins, what's next for Conor? Does he stay at 155 and work his way back? Or does he go back to 145 where he says it's the weight cut's tough? I don't think it hurts his career. I think Eddie is an amazing fighter, and he's got all the tools and a couple of solid paths to victory. But I think it hurts the marketability a bit. He's no longer Conor McGregor, the untouchable. He's not. People aren't going to look at it like they did Diaz, where he fought 170 at the last minute. This is going to hurt him.
Yeah, this could be something that if McGregor, this is just my opinion, of course, that especially what happened with Ronda Rousey, where she was very untouchable for a long time and then she loses, the same thing could be thought about here with McGregor, because for someone who's a little bit of an outsider like myself, everyone knows who Conor McGregor is. Just because of his, his press conferences, the way he hypes fights. And then when you watch him, he's exciting. He's a fighter that you don't sit there and have to kind of get through the fight. He keeps you engaged the entire time.
Absolutely. And that the style that makes him that exciting, unfortunately, leaves him in vulnerable positions.
Sure.
He wins with a highlight reel or he loses. And there's no in between. He's not going to win a 25-minute boring decision. He's going to plant you. And he's going to leave you staring up at the bright lights, or he's going to lose the fight. We'll see, but I don't see Alvarez surviving that storm.
Not that left hand from Conor McGregor especially in the first round.
He just has a tendency to get hurt, and this could be bad. At the same time, if Eddie can get inside and grapple in the first round, that changes the whole fight. They're not sweaty yet, and if you're not sweaty, you're not your defense and grappling is not what it could be. Because there's a lot of friction. You're not sliding out of stuff. You're not just going to pop out. This could be real bad for Conor.
The one thing that no one really has mentioned yet is Eddie Alvarez hasn't fought in this magnitude of a fight before. This is Conor McGregor, UFC 205, the biggest fight card of the history of UFC and MMA in Madison Square Garden.
I'll give you that. I mean, Conor's obviously a lot more used to the stage, but Eddie's a former champ. He's fought 5-round fights. He's done it. He's fought and headlined cards for a long time. While it may seem entirely different to us that the pressure is huge in this situation, Madison Square Garden is not a giant arena. There's not 90,000 people there. It's not. Madison Square Garden is not any bigger than any arena he's ever been in before, and I think he'll be fine. I don't think the jitters are going to do anything. I think these guys are pros. I think Eddie's got way too many fights under his belt. Dozens. To where he's going to walk in there, it's another day at the office. Hey, he's a pro fighter.
I mean, not to take anything away from you there, Ian, but I mean, Madison Square Garden is Madison Square Garden. Not just say because I'm a Knicks fan and I like to hype up Madison Square Garden as much as possible. It might not have the amount of population as you would see.
I think he'd be more
ones.
Rattled if he went to the Rogers Center in Toronto like GSP did, and there's 98,000 people sitting there. Then the $30,000 you're going to get at Madison Square Garden.
Jose Aldo said that the pressure wasn't going to get to him, and look what happened, 13-second knockout.
I don't think the pressure got to him. I think he just came out. I think Conor got in his head. I think Conor got him mad. I don't think Conor's going to get Eddie mad, but I still think Conor's going to knock Eddie out.
I mean, after watching some of that press conference, Eddie Alvarez is definitely...
Or he's a good actor. I think Conor knocks him out.
I think they both can be. I think they both can be.
So I'm going Conor in the first. What do you think?
I'm going Conor in the first as well.
Conor in the first by KO. That's the call.
All right, guys. Conor McGregor, first round knockout, calling it right here. This was your UFC 205 preview. Guys, thanks a lot. Listen, all the listeners out there, if you're going to sit back, make sure you grab every aspect of this fight. Not only the prelims, but everything on FS1. Make sure you order the fight and kick back and enjoy one of the best. No, I think we have already said it. This is the best UFC card ever put together.
Ever.
So,
on paper, this is easily the most talented, biggest bang for the buck card ever, all time.
All right, guys. All listeners, thank you guys for giving us all of your support. France, make sure you check out the social media sites. He'll give us all the picks on there before we even hit UFC 205 on Saturday. Of course, I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian Mariano, for Brian France and Ian Foard. Make sure you check us out every week. Every Friday, this will be thrown up, and we'll get you through all these big cards. And, of course, we will see you guys in the Octagon.